Welcome to the Soulbound Studios Podcast. I'm your host, Mandy. I'm a certified therapeutic art life coach, and I'm currently in school to become a licensed art therapist one day. Here, we dive deep into the world of creative arts, exploring passions, facing fears, finding inspiration, and pursuing self-development. Whether you're looking to discover a new hobby or turn a beloved pastime into a full-blown passion, this podcast is for you. We're all about empowering women to take charge of their lives and follow their dreams. Join us every single Sunday for a new episode, and be sure to connect with our incredible community of like-minded women. Let's start this creative journey together. Hello, everybody. Today, I am so excited to introduce you to my new friend, Hannah. She has a very beautiful spirit, and we just did some really grounding work before we started this, and there's such good energy flowing between us right now. So, Hannah, why don't you explain what it is that you do, who you are, and we can kind of dive into our planned episode that we have here.
Yeah, actually, I love the 2 minutes that we did before this. I think just to give your listeners a little bit of insight, we just did a short grounding. Us have had a bit of a busy day, and we just thought, right, we need to kind of drop into our bodies a little bit before we start, which I guess is some of the content that might come about in this conversation today. But my name's Hannah. I call myself a transformational somatic coach, and what that means is I work with people on a deeper level than just the surface in order to shift fears and blocks and doubts, most of which are stored in our bodies, in our nervous systems through generational traumas or experiences or childhood wounding, childhood experiences, all the things that we accumulate over time. And so I work with people on a deeper level to help them achieve goals that they never even thought that they could achieve, like really helping people, guiding people through processes to realize that they have everything that they need and we can create the lives that we want. We just have to come home to ourselves and trust ourselves and realize that we can do it. So that's part of the process that I take people through in my coaching.
I love that so much. There's a song that's been on repeat in my world right now, and it's from The Greatest Showman. I don't know if you've seen that show, but the lyric is, "We can live in a world that we design." And so when you said that last part, it just reminded me of we can build a life of our dreams if we trust ourselves to do so. And so anyways, I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So today we are going to talk about the different creative blocks and how fear and different forms of fear, because it's not just a one word, but how fear can block your creativity and block you from reaching the potential I think that we all have within our own souls. And I love this too, because my favorite book, my listeners has probably heard me talk about it a million times, is Big Magic, which is Creative Living Beyond Fear. And in it, she refers to fear as if it's a person. So it's like fear can come along for the ride, but it's not going to be in charge of the navigation, and it's not going to be in charge of the radio, and it's not going to be in charge of any kind of it doesn't even get to pick the snacks. It's just along for the ride because that's part of any new adventure or journey that we're going on. And so I kind of channel a little bit of Elizabeth Gilbert when we're talking about this stuff, but you've written a beautiful article on different kinds of fear. And do you just kind of want to share some of this perspectives that you have on fear and the different kinds that there might be?
Yeah. I guess I can list the 6 kinds and then we can go into them in a bit more detail on conversation. But
yeah,
a lot of this is I've discovered this through my own somatic therapy that I have been doing with another therapist, which has led me to do the work myself and then through my coaching. But it's essentially we have anxiety is a form of fear, for example. Overwhelm is a form of fear. A lot of it is projection into the future, worrying about what might happen, what might not happen. And ultimately, it's all accumulated in our system and it causes blocks in our creativity and in our vision, ultimately. For example, fear of failure. I think I've got that as number one on my article because I think that that is probably one of the most prominent blocks that we as humans experience, because we have a goal that maybe is bigger than we believe that we can reach, and so we stay comfortable. We stay in a position where well, we don't have to play big or be seen, so as not to risk failing. And that could come from an experience it could be something in school, for example, where you tried out for a sports team and you didn't get in, and the teacher or your parents reacted in a way that made you feel like you'd failed. And so you took that on board as like, oh, well, if I go for what I want, then I'm going to fail. And it could be something as simple as that. It could be a catalyst for that kind of belief. And then over time, we accumulate lots of different beliefs that end up forming quite a severe block to pursuing what we want. So yeah, it's like when we're afraid of pursuing these new opportunities or taking risks, like I said, we stay small and we keep ourselves in our comfort zone. So that's number one. Don't know if you want me to pause there, or should we continue and then we
go ahead. Keep going. Yeah, keep going.
Okay, so second one I've got is the fear. I mean, I feel like all of these steps are equally as potent, and they all weave into each other in some kind of way. Ultimately, they come down to, do we feel worthy enough to pursue what we want to pursue? But I've got number two as the fear of judgment. And I think I can really relate to this. I don't know about you, but fear of judgment, it kind of goes hand in hand with failure in some way. Because it's like, if we fear criticism or rejection from others, and most of it is a story, right? It's because maybe we've been rejected in the past, or maybe we've been judged in the past. But a lot of the times it's a story that we believe that if we go for what we want, we put ourselves out there, then people are going to feel a certain way about us. And ultimately, it's our projection. So we assume they're going to feel a certain way about us because that's how we feel about ourselves. So it's always about going inwards and looking at ourselves and being like, okay, well, what is this person showing me, maybe about the parts of myself that I judge? And that's ultimately the way out of all of this. So it's this kind of desire for acceptance and validation out there means that there's something inside of us that we're not accepting and validating. So that's kind of a little bit about where the fear of judgment comes from. And yeah.
I like that one too, because that's one I didn't ever realize that actually affects me more than I think it does. Because I have to tell myself all the time, there's a quote, I heard it from someone, I don't even know who, so I can't even take credit for this. It's not mine, but other people's opinions of myself are none of my business. It's none of my business, because it doesn't matter what they think. It matters what I believe about myself. And to me, that when I tell myself that, like when I find myself assuming other people's thoughts about me, it's not fair to them, because they may not be thinking those things at all. And like you said, it's a projection. But when I'm assuming other people's thoughts about me, I am basically then putting them in a negative framework and assuming that they're thinking terrible things about me when they're not. They could probably be cheering me on, but it's not, their opinions of me are none of my business. You know what I mean? And even if they are, if people are talking shit, that's their business, not mine. And that's not the energy that I allow into my life. And so that's one that I have to tell myself often, when either if people do talk shit, or if I think they are, or whatever it is, it's none of my business. None of my business. And so that's how I shut that one down. I don't know if that's the right way to do it, but that's how I shut that one down.
I love that. I feel as though I don't know if it sounds a little bit like Byron Katie's work. She talks about what is she, and I might butcher this, but it's something like my business, my neighbor's business, or their business, and God's business. There's essentially like, if I'm in God's business or another's business, that I'm not in my own business. That's what it reminded me of. So yeah.
Byron Katie is beautiful. And then I'm a huge fan of Liz Gilbert, Mel Robbins, Rachel Hollis. Like, there's so many inspirational women that I probably pulled that from one of them, and I just don't know who at this point, because I heard it a long time ago. And so I'm not sure the original source of it, but I would not doubt, not one bit, if it was Byron Katie, because she does beautiful work. So
really, it's a really good one to change that perspective, I think, because it's ultimately that gets a lot of this stuff, right? like, what is the story in our head that's making us believe that they're going to behave a certain way towards me? Because it hasn't even happened. We're imagining it, right?
Yeah. Or if like someone says like some kind of like snide comment that you might misinterpret or take it the wrong way, to let that get to your own soul is your decision. Like, and you know what I mean? Like what they say is their business, but the way it affects me is mine. And that's what I have control about over. And so it's like, you have to have this balance of valuing, yes, what other people's opinions in some way, because other people can help you grow. But if you're taking it and putting a negative pressure on your soul, like that's when it's none of my business. And I'm going to just continue doing what I need to do. And I think sometimes that fear of judgment really stops us from doing things. There's another quote out there that says, like, the fans in the arena that are booing did never put in the work to actually be on the field. Like, it doesn't matter what the arena is saying because they're not putting in the work to be on the field.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Fear of judgment, I guess, is one that I've put some work in and I didn't realize I was doing. I pay attention to that one a lot, and I didn't realize it was an actual fear.
Yeah. And actually it leads me on to my next one, because it's number 3 is perfectionism. And a lot of the times the fear of judgment comes from because we have this incredibly high standard for ourselves, and we put, particularly, you know, for entrepreneurs and for big achievers, we put these really high standards on ourselves, and therefore, because we're so hard on ourselves, we assume that other people are going to be the same, right? So, and if you can, I'm sure you can relate to perfectionism. I think most people on this planet can relate to it in some level, right?
So actually, if you don't mind, if we can just camp here for a second, because perfectionism was one of those things that I really, really, really had to break down to also heal from depression, because perfectionism was the source of my anxiety and depression when I was really going through it, specifically postpartum depression. At the time, I was running an in-home daycare, and it was licensed through the Air Force. And so we had to have our house like perfect because they would drop in for inspections at any time. And it turned my home into like an institution. Like, there were certain safety things, like you couldn't leave, like, there's no way I could have this candle running right now, you know, different things like that. And so it turned this, like, I have to have everything perfect all the time, even in my own home. And I have this newborn baby, and I don't know what brand new mother ever has their home perfect, ever. And it puts so much pressure on me to always be perfect, because I wanted to make sure that I was, you know, staying in compliance with this new licensure and things like that. But it didn't just start, it wasn't just that. It was, do I have a Pinterest perfect birthday party for my 3-year-old? Is it, you know, like different things that really in the scope of things just don't matter. I really, really, really had to break that down in order for me to like move on from that depression and anxiety phase of my life. Because I find that if like people are coming over and I'm more stressed about like the stack of papers on the counter than I am about the energy that I'm welcoming them into my home with, like it just breaks that energy. And there's a level of perfectionism, I think, that sources anxiety. And I've had to put a lot of work in over the years to break that one down very specifically.
Yeah. I mean, you know, ultimately perfection is an illusion. And so if we're trying to achieve something that doesn't exist, we are always going to be second guessing ourselves. Nothing is ever going to be good enough, right? And so this fear of imperfection, and particularly when it comes to creativity, like it stops us from taking risks. It stops us from putting ourselves out there and exploring new possibilities. It really yeah, and you know, from a mental health perspective, as you've just discussed, it's can be quite detrimental if it's just us against us, right? In this kind of, yeah, like I said, it's an illusion. So we can be really hard on ourselves if we are in this realm of perfectionism. So I can completely understand how that unfolded for you in that way.
And I think I can see where you mean it ties into the fear of judgment, because the perfectionism is, what do I look like for other people? Do I have my shit together enough for other people? And it's not, how am I making my life better? It's, have I checked all of these boxes? Is it perfect before I send it out into the world, or whatever it is? And it really is, how do I look in other people's eyes? I think perfectionism is that. And, I used to get really, I don't know the word, but it would like jar my soul when people would call me super mom. Cause like I'm high achiever, I'm very ambitious. And I would, I'm in school full time and I'm doing all these things, right? And when people call me super mom, I like cringe a little, because that's never my intention. And to me, that was something that I was striving for when I was in that state of perfectionism. I wanted to be seen as the super mom. And so now when people call me that, it almost like, the only phrase I can think of is, it jars my soul a little bit. It like triggers me back into that world where I was trying so hard to be the super mom. And now I can just like, I don't need to be super mom. It's okay if the Amazon package delivers the birthday decorations like an hour into the birthday party. It's fine. Anyways, what I'm getting at is, perfectionism starts with, I think, the fear of judgment.
Mm-hmm.
They go hand in hand.
Yeah. I mean, I think they kind of, they all do. And I think just on the back point, I'm not a mother myself, but I know from other mothers around me, is that whole like, your child is your absolute world, and therefore you want things to be perfect for them. And again, that's that projection of fear, your perfectionism, or having to have everything perfect for the child. It's coming from our beliefs about what it is to be perfect, or what it means to be perfect for them. And I guess we're at risk of missing things, aren't we? We're at risk of taking opportunities from our children and letting them be imperfect and messy and all these kind of things. And I think if super mom is like, what even does that mean, right? Can that also mean losing your shit on a Tuesday afternoon, falling to pieces on the floor? Like, can that also be super mom? Do you know what I mean? Does it have to be that everything it looks a certain way and it's neat and tidy? Because that just doesn't exist. It's not. It's real. So I think it's understanding, well, what's my version of perfect for me, even though perfect doesn't exist. What is as perfect as it can be for me, and how can I be okay with that? How can I and sitting with the discomfort of imperfection and messiness and unknownness is not something that we are socialized to be okay with. We are kind of socialized in this linear world where everything has a trajectory and it's goal oriented and it has to look a certain way, or especially with social media as well, we feel like we need to be a certain way and be doing certain things to to really be meeting an expectation in the world. And I think as great as social media is, it often doesn't help that, does it? Particularly when, and comparison is another one of the points I make, but particularly when comparison comes in, when all these perfect people are showing up online and we are looking at that thinking, oh, so that's the bar that I need to meet now, right? So it's really just breaking down all these norms and beliefs within ourselves and being like, actually, I don't have to adhere to what's going on out there. I can have my own version of what perfect looks like for me.
Yeah. And the thing that I hate about social media sometimes too is that it's not real. Like, you can, one, AI sucks, but two, there's so many different things that people can do to, like, I don't know, let's just use like a fitness model. And for example, like, she can turn to get the right angles for the right camera, but it doesn't show that her belly also folds in the middle when she bends over. You know what I mean? Like, it's not real. And so it's hard to like put yourself up to what you see on the internet, because perfectionism is an illusion. Like, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. And I love when people show up authentically on social media. Like,
Mm.
I'm not perfect. There was one girl, she's like, if I haven't offended you yet, just wait your turn. Like, I think it's like a trending audio or something. And she's like, I have body hair and I don't wear a bra and I don't really give a shit. Like, take your comments somewhere else. And I'm like, yes, girl, just get it. So anyways, we're kind of getting off track here, but I think that it's perfectionism, fear of judgment, all of those things, they all go hand in hand.
Yeah. Yeah. And brings me to my next point. So number 4 in the article is self-doubt. And I know you were mentioning this before as something that you were resonating with. And I think this self-doubt and worthiness go hand in hand. And a lot of it stems from this deep belief that we don't believe that we can do something. I'm not good enough to have what I want to have. I'm not smart enough, pretty enough, strong enough, whatever it is, to create what I want to create in this world. And so really, again, it's looking at like, what is the root of this? Like, what is the root of the fear that's blocking my creative pathways, my ability to feel like I can be authentically creative and express myself? And, where does it even begin? Because you look at children, right? And I know, stuff can happen even in the womb before we're born, but you look at children, and most children are just flailing their arms around, running around, screaming, not looking behind them to check to see if someone's judging them. There's this real sense of authenticity. It's like, I'm going to scream when I want something, or I'm going to fling my arms out for a hug. I'm going to tell you what I want when I want, and I expect to get it. Mm-hmm. And this is real, like, there's no self-doubt. This is real sense of self and confidence and worthiness. And somehow, somewhere along the line, layers and layers of that for a lot of us start to shed, and we create, armoring and protection because we don't believe that we can be that way and express that way.
So I love the idea of there's self-doubt and then there's fear of failure. And I think that those go hand in hand. But the one fear that I resonate with, and I think this ties into this, is fear of success. Like, it's almost like, what if I actually could do this thing? And it's like, oh my God, well, my dreams are so massive. What if I actually did this? That's terrifying to think about because it's so far out of what my everyday is. Like, could my life actually change that much if I did this? And sometimes I think that holds me back more than, like, I know I can do it. Like, okay, so can I tell you one of my dreams? And that I think that for whatever reason in my brain, I'm like, I know I could do this. I believe I could do it. But like, there's something that holds me back. So maybe you can help me process through this. So I have this huge dream. I'm going to school. I just got reaccepted into BSU. I flunked out the semester of my divorce. And so, because I was in school full time and I got divorced and it was too much. And so I flunked out of that semester, but BSU just accepted me back in. So I start again in the fall, which I'm super excited for. But I'm going to school to become an art therapist. And so my bachelor's will be in psychology. And then I'm also doing some art minors. And then I'll go on to get my master's. And what I really, really, really want to do is open up this beautiful studio space, this art studio retreat type vibe in the mountains, like very secluded, like people come there to unplug and just connect to their soul a little bit. And they can either get art therapy services and like work through some of those like traumas or things that they need to process, but then also just take time to just like sit by the lake and paint or journal or play with a new set of instruments or musical anything to just kind of explore that part of their soul and their body and the things that they need to process and use different forms of arts to experience that. So I want to like own this piece of land and this beautiful retreat, and like people come there for like the solstice. I think that's the word I'm looking for. Anyways, it's just such a far-fetched dream, in my opinion. Like, I know I could do it. I know that it would take years to build that up to it. And like, I know that every step I take in that direction is getting me there. But the fear of success of that actually happening, like, it's like a dream life. Like, I feel like sometimes I live in a fantasy world, sometimes in my dreams, but I have that big, big goal. Like, I really would love to do something like that.
Mm.
It's like
That sounds
nonstop
amazing.
retreats. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, I can see that it's lighting you up as you talk about it.
Yeah.
And I suppose my question to you, who is telling you, who is saying that it's too far-fetched? Like, who is saying that it's you live in Fantasyland? Whose voice is that?
Probably my own. Well, and I think just society in general. Like, there's this song by Lily Mayola, I think is how you say her last name. Um, and it's Don't Quit Your Daydream. And um, gosh, what is the lyrics? It's something along the lines of like they think we're crazy until it actually happens. Like,
Mm.
no one believes that you can actually do it until you actually do it. And so you just have to keep going. Like, don't quit your daydream. And so I have this playlist. It's called Goal Getter, and it has all of these like inspirational songs on like achieving the things that you want in life. And I play that. So I have this ritual in the morning. I have my coffee, and I go out and I sit with my dog on the porch, and we watch the sunrise and just watch the neighborhood wake up. And I play this like relaxing instrumental piano music. And then I will write in my journal, and I'll kind of plan my day, and just take a second to just ground myself and connect to my home and my world a little bit. But then as soon as I come back inside, I turn on that goal getter playlist, and it's like, okay, now it's time to get something done. Like, what are you striving for? What steps today can you take to get yourself towards a goal and get those things done? And so like I list things out, but I turn on that goal getter playlist, and I think it kind of helps me stay in the right mindset that like you can achieve your goals. You just can't let this negative self-talk, this fear of failure, this fear of success, this self-doubt, you cannot let it drive. It's along for the ride. It's fine. It's going to be part of the adventure, but it's not choosing the radio. It's not choosing the snacks. It's not choosing any part of the navigation of this journey. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, ultimately the fear of being seen, right? The fear
Oh.
of success, the fear of being seen, because it's like, and it's asking ourselves the question, so what do I fear if, this is what I ask people in our coaching sessions, it's like, well, what do you fear would happen if you got your goal? And oftentimes people, they might say, well, what do you mean? Of course I don't have a fear of it. I want it. And it's a case of, well, what would happen if you slowed down? And if I asked you again, what do you fear would happen if you got your goal or you achieved your dreams? And a lot of the times, and you could even try this now, like it may be a longer process than the time that we've got, but it's like, if you really tune in, for me, it was always, oh, well, then if I went for my goal, I would have to put myself out there. And if I put myself out there, then I'm at risk of failing. And if I'm at risk of failing, then I'm going to feel awful and my world's going to crumble. So a lot of the time, it's much deeper than we realize. And that's one of the main things I do in my coaching, is like getting underneath, or what is underneath that? Like, what is underneath that fear of being seen? And how can we ultimately really flood ourselves with compassion and learn about ourselves, know where it came from? We don't always need to know where it came from. I find it personally useful because I can have more compassion for myself. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense to me why I feel that way. And it's learning to kind of be with the fear, as you just described. It's coming along for the ride. It's not driving, it's in the passenger seat. But how can we bring it along with compassion as a part of ourselves as we go forward for our dreams? Because ultimately, if we're going for a big dream, the fear is going to come up, right? That's natural. It's going to come up. But it's how are we being with that fear as we're going for what we're striving to achieve? And that is who we're being is more important than what we want ultimately.
Yeah. And, as you were talking, I was kind of processing through my fear of that success of that dream. Right. And I think, and this is a journal prompt, like you said, I think it might take more time to fully process it. But what came to mind in this specific moment was like, I have this dream, and it's like this ultimate, really peaceful life, right? Like, if you think about it, like owning a place in the mountains where I think I would live, my kids are probably grown at that point. You know what I mean? Because like I can just be up there and that's my life. Like I see this really peaceful version of my life, but I know I can't get that by just coasting through life, like spending my days scrolling through social media. I know I can't get there by not having a plan. Like I think part of the fear of success, fear of failure, the self-doubt is maybe the grit that comes with all of the hard work to actually get there. Like I know that this is going to take so much work. And sometimes in this phase of life, I'm like, I just don't have the energy for it. It's like almost like the fear of being pushed. You know what I mean? Like you have to have that determination and that grit and that hard work. I wouldn't say it's fear of hard work because I'm not afraid to work hard, but it's like motivating yourself to do the hard work now so you can have the peaceful life later, if that makes sense.
Totally. And as you're speaking, it kind of just reminds me of the, when the perfectionism is driving a lot of this movement, it feels like that push. And particularly for us women, that feeling of push, that doesn't feel good. It feels kind of yucky. I mean, I don't know what your experience of it is, but for me, it's exhausting. It's like, oh no, I don't want to push actually. And one of the greatest lessons that I learned for myself, and maybe this resonates with you, is like, how easy can I let this be? Like, what if it actually could be, what if I could be in flow? What if I could trust that the universe has got me and that my timing is going to unfold in the way that it needs to based on my development? And like, what if it could actually be easy? Because it actually can. It just depends on what's going on in our internal world, right? How much fear is driving this ultimately. So yeah, that's kind of what came up for me as you were talking.
I like that too, because I understand now, like, because I think before, I'm going to take this way back. So in 2020, I started working towards this dream, and it was something that was lighting the fire in my soul. It was like this passionate, like it almost felt like a mandate in my soul. It wasn't even like oh, I have this cool idea. It was like, you need to do this. Like it was really strong in my soul to do it. And I there was a lot of blocks, and essentially I feel that the universe needed me to get to a different phase of life. I needed to go through a divorce. I needed to figure out a little bit more of who I am. I needed to get my kids out of this baby toddler stage so I can have a little bit more free time. Like when they're at school, my youngest starts kindergarten in the fall. So it's, we're getting into this like older age group of kids. And I think now it's interesting that after I, started working for other people and got a divorce and I'm running my own home, 4 years later, the exact same dream, the exact same mandate, almost in every single form is coming back so strong. Like so strong. Like I think the universe was like, just take a minute to just stop and breathe, get your life where you need it to be, and then we're going to go. And so I think I had to release some of that stuff in my life, and that pressure that I was putting on myself, and allow myself to grow a little bit in order to be in this place that I am in my life right now to do it. And I was going somewhere with this and I totally lost what my point was with that. But essentially, like, I can't push myself forward if I've got all of these other factors. And the universe is saying, like, yes, you have this mandate, but let's get your life together first, just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I realize now, this was the point I was going to make. I realize now that it doesn't have to be an overnight success. Like everybody wants to be, like, but there's no such thing. How easy can it be to just have these beautiful conversations on a regular podcast as a form of marketing? How easy and fun could this be? And this is a form of marketing. And it's just crazy to me how something so simple and fun and free flowing and beautiful could be to actually get you to where you want to be.
Exactly. And now it feels like you're not talking from the fear anymore. It actually feels like you're talking a bit more from your essence. It feels like you're talking a bit more from your intuition. That's what I'm hearing now. It's like you just switched your energy, right? Because it's that we'll always focus on what we don't have. If we're coming from lack, it's going to be hard because we're never going to have enough and we're always going to be thinking about what we don't have. But if we come from a place of, well, what do I have here right now? What is in front of me and how can I utilize it and actually feel the energy of excitement that comes with it? And ultimately that's what manifesting is, right? We have to embody that which we want to feel when we reach our goal. So just what you tapped in there is like the breadcrumb back to yourself, which allows all of these processes to unfold in a beautiful way, like you say.
And allow the long-term journey to be fun and easy.
Yeah.
Instead of the grit and because like you hear these stories like, do it even when you're sad and when you're mad and when you're scared and when like all of these things, like keep doing it even if you don't feel like it. And I understand that. I understand how you have to keep going. Like if you want something, you can't just quit if it gets hard. But at the same time, could we change our mindset? Because yes, doing a regular podcast every week is a lot of work, but it's also really fun. The people, you especially right now in this very moment, I'm very grateful for because you get to meet so many beautiful people through podcasting. But it's a good way to connect to a lot of people. And anyways, I understand that every single baby step every single baby step that I'm taking now is a step towards that bigger dream. And I can see the dream that I'm aching for. And I love this conversation because I do think that it's helping me break down some of those like fears of success and fears of self-doubt and fears of failure and judgment and all of that. So this was fantastic.
Yeah.
What's your next one?
So my next one, so we've got fear of vulnerability, and I feel like this kind of plays into scene as well, right? So it's this idea that creativity requires us to tap into our emotions and these deeper experiences within ourselves. And you know, for some of us, vulnerability and putting ourselves out there is easy. For some of us, it's not, myself included. It feels quite scary to put myself out there. It has done in the past. It's stuff that I've had to work through. So it's kind of, it's risking that rejection because ultimately not everyone is going to like you, right? Not everyone's going to like what you do. Not everyone's going to appreciate what you do. And that's okay, because if we were for everyone, it would be ludicrous. You know, we can't be for everyone. You don't meet a celebrity who's liked by everybody. So, you know, why would it be the same for us when we start to put ourselves into the limelight? So I think it's just that importance, or again, that coming home to ourselves, like how can we be with ourselves when it does feel a bit tender or when it does feel a bit scary, you know, because it's okay to feel scared. It's just, what do we do about it? How do we be with ourselves? And I think, again, you know, to reiterate, this kind of pushing energy that feels a bit more masculine. It feels a bit more, you know, it doesn't feel intuitive for me as a woman. I don't know how you experience it, but particularly as us women, it's even more important to come home to ourselves and to come into our intuition and to come into our bodies and to be that nurturing mother role for ourselves, ultimately, to be able to spread our work in a way that we can make it feel safe for ourselves.
And you know, there's so much in my mind that's going on with this, but I think the fear of vulnerability. So there's an author that I follow. His name's John Acuff, and he had posted recently, he said, no one wrote a bad review about me when I was working a 9 to 5 and sitting in my cubicle. Like no one wrote a bad review until I actually published my books. And as you are more vulnerable and you put yourself out there and you start doing the things and you put yourself in front of people, it opens yourself up to criticism. And I think that's where the fear of vulnerability lies. But again, that goes into other people's opinions, which are none of my business. And so in there, it was saying that there's 2% of the population that will always have something bad about you to say. But as you are more vulnerable and you put yourself out there more, that 2%, it scales, right? Like if you're only seeing 100 people, 2 people are not going to like you, or what statistic in math is. But then if you put yourself in 1,000 a room full of 1,000 people, then 200 people aren't going to like you. And that feels scary because that's a lot more people, but it's still in the scope of things, only 2%.
Mm.
You're going to get kickback and feedback from people but again, the people that are booing from the stands did not put in the work to be in the arena.
Yeah. And actually these people can be the most perfect mirrors for our growth, particularly when we're putting ourselves out there, because how we react to them is really telling in where we are with our own criticism, self-criticism, right? Like how we feel others. So it's if we can use others as that mirror of like, okay, well, how do I feel about that when they're saying that about me? Is it tearing me up inside, or am I okay with it? And if it's tearing me up inside, well, which part of me do I need to attend to cope with that better, to soothe myself when I'm feeling triggered or whatever it is that I feel when someone criticizes me? And ultimately, if we can keep doing that, then we build a stronger shield, and I'm sure that we can all get to a point where we feel so confident in our work and in our services, because ultimately it's not about us, it's about our services. They're not criticizing us. They can never really criticize us, right?
Yeah.
So it's services. So if we separate our worth and ourselves from our services, and then we learn to be so confident about our services, and we create a bulletproof container, I truly believe we can create such a strong sense of self-belief in what we're doing that doesn't bother us anymore.
Right. I had listened to a podcast with Elizabeth Gilbert and Marie Forleo, and I think it was on Marie TV. And it was when Big Magic had first come out. And she was saying that a lot of artists of all sorts, authors, painters, whatever, they get so attached to the work that they create that they feel that it's a personal attack when someone doesn't like it. And she's like, you really have to learn how to separate yourself from your work. She goes, this book is not me. It's just a thing I made. And really, it doesn't matter if someone stomps on it or ruins it or whatever, because I made it and now it's just out in the universe. It's not me. And so she's like, when you have to stop calling your work your baby, because it's not this thing that you birthed. It's not part of you. It's just a thing you made. Like, it's okay if people don't like the things you make, but that doesn't change your value.
Yeah. And I think that is the most important thing to understand, particularly as entrepreneurs.
Yes. So then your next one is fear of comparison. And I think that ties into a lot of them. It's like they're all a flywheel. They're all connected in some way.
Yeah, they are. They really are. I think, and again, I've mentioned this, the social media age, how it's very easy to compare. And again, I'm going to say, particularly as women, and I know that this is my experience, maybe men feel the same way. I don't know. I guess I speak to a lot of women about this, that, because of all the filters and the adjustments and everything, in terms of like body image, I'm sure we have shifted massively. In fact, I can almost guarantee that we've shifted massively what we believe to be an ideal body or look or whatever it is, based on what we see, because now that is what everyone's aspiring to look like or obtain, or, in these materialistic, superficial ways. So I think the comparison thing is a big one. And I write about it later when I talk about, how we can combat some of these things. And if we can turn comparison into inspiration, then it becomes, okay, well, what are they showing me in them? Like, what is it in them that I desire to have? Or what quality in them is it that I desire to have more of? Because oftentimes when we're comparing, it means that we think that they have something we don't. And actually, if we're noticing it in them, it means that it's just something in us that is waiting to be woken up, essentially. So again, it's like, how can we use every single thing out there for our growth, and just watch the mind when it's going into these negative loops, and instead, use it for ourselves and our development? I think it's empowering, and it brings us back to ourselves.
So I think comparison also goes into like jealousy. And, I'm really into the meanings of dreams. So I have very, very, very vivid dreams. Like sometimes I'll wake up and I seriously question if it was real life or not. It's like that real. And so I got into, when I was a kid, my mom had this book, and it was a dream dictionary. And I remember as a child, like whenever I'd have dreams, I'd go in and Okay, what does it mean if you see a bear in your dream or whatever? And I would like look up the meaning of these dreams. And it's something that has stuck with me. And there's a dream that I used to have all the time where it was like my partner, the person that I was with, was cheating on me. And when you look up the meaning of like an affair for a dream, it actually is, it makes you evaluate who that person that your partner cheated on you with, what does that person have that you wish you had? It's a indication of insecurity. And I think that jealousy and comparison go hand in hand. And I think sometimes when we're comparing ourselves with where we are right now in life to where someone else is, it's like there's a quote that says, don't compare their chapter 6 to your chapter 1, because you're at totally different phases of your books and your books are not the same. So you can't compare your journey to theirs.
Exactly. And that's a really good lesson for all of us to learn.
Mm-hmm.
We are all on our own path. And again, just goes back to that trust. Like, can we trust that I'm in and where I'm supposed to be right now? And I think that's another core piece that goes with all the worthiness and the the self-doubt. I think that ties into like, can I really surrender to the greater plan that is laid out for me? I don't know it yet. I don't know what's going to happen yet, but can I surrender to it? And I think that's been a big learning for me. That has not come easy to me at all. Being with the unknown and uncertainty has been a really, really hard journey to learn to be with. But I really feel like I'm coming into that. And then when you learn how to trust, everything changes.
Oh my God, yes.
Everything.
Yeah. And so I'm in this interesting phase of life right now. Back in March, I left a really toxic job and I've been doing like art full time. And it's been really difficult to switch from having a very cushy, good paying job that basically killed my soul to switching to enjoying and loving my life and having to hustle a little bit to be able to make my bills. But I wrote in my journal yesterday, and this is why this comes to mind, is, overall, I live a very peaceful life right now. Like my life is really peaceful. And the only maybe slight stressor is maybe financial. But even then, I just trust that it's all going to work out the way it needs to. Like, and when I move into things in that regard, I keep finding new opportunities, or people will then reach out to me. And I'm like, I also saw this quote, and I struggle sometimes, just a side note here. I struggle sometimes with my spirituality or my faith. Like, is it God? Is it universe? Is it like, what is it? But this quote said, the same God that planted the dream for you will also plant the clients for you. Like, and then Christy Wright says, if it's his will, it's his bill. So let him figure out how to pay your mortgage. You just show up for your creativity and the things that you feel called to do. You show up and you trust, and he'll just take care of the rest. And it's a very interesting switch from where I was the first quarter of the year and where I am now, and allowing myself to live the life that I want to and just trust that it'll all work out the way it needs to. Might be inconsistent. It might be a hustle, but it's better than killing myself for someone that doesn't care, for someone else's monetary gain, So anyways, it's been a fun journey, fun phase of life, that I've just enjoyed stepping into a little bit more, trusting the universe that it'll just bring you what you need.
Yeah, it's a big one. And it does, it really does. It just, the timing, it will happen when it's going to happen.
Yeah. And I feel very like in alignment. Like it might appear like chaotic to someone else, but I feel very in alignment with where I need to be. Very in alignment. And I can't argue with that. And all my bills are paid. So I'm not arguing anything. It's just you trust. And this is where I can't let other people's opinions dictate what I do. I can't let fear dictate what I do. I think that's why I enjoy my morning ritual out on my porch with my coffee and the sunrise, because it grounds me every day and it helps me remember to be grateful for the things that I have and the life that I want to live and the goals I want to achieve. And I come in and I'm not afraid to break into those steps because I've reset that and I've grounded it every day.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's my little rant. But I think it's better to start your morning like that than it is to start with social media, because that goes back into that comparison.
Totally. Yeah. It's all ultimately, all of it is just stemming from looking to external things to make us happy. And if we can come into, like you're saying, you feel aligned, you feel trust, it's coming home to ourselves. It's coming home to, being in our bodies. It's like, and this is another thing that I do in my practice, is like bringing us back into our bodies, out of our heads, out of the external world, and going inwards and finding what we need from within, so that whatever happens out there, we're going to be okay in here. Mm-hmm. And I think that's ultimately the biggest takeaway that I feel like I always want people to leave with when they've been working with me. It's like, learn how to come back to yourself, and you will always, you will always be fine. You will always be thriving if you can find that from within.
I really love that. And I've gotten like this much experience of what it is that you do, because when we very first started recording and I was so nervous, and you could see it, you could feel it. You're like, oh my God, her energy is off. You like stop the recording and you took a second to like bring me back into myself. Just pay attention to where you're sitting, pay attention to how you're breathing, pay attention to this world around you. And just, and what I really love, and I think I'm always going to connect to now, is the candle that'll ground me. And that exercise that we did right before this, and just the fire and the soul kind of reference to that. I just think the work that you do is absolutely beautiful. Like, and I can already tell that you're really, really good at it, just in the little bit of experience that I've had. So can you please tell us, if anybody wants to work with you, how can they contact you? How can they find you on social media, or what is the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I just have a website. So you can find me at www.hannahblackburn.com. So it's spelled HANNAHBLACKBURN.com. And all of my contact details are on there.
Okay. When I post this podcast episode, I'll put your information in the show notes so people can always have a link to you as well. So this was wonderful.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yes, I really enjoyed this. So thank you so much for being here and being part of this podcast and sharing a little bit of your insight and your good energies with the world.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.